So Tuesday was a little bit kind of sad, maybe a skosh depressing, because we were talking about, politics and the protests and everything. So I figured that today we would brighten things up and talk about the militarization of the police.
Yeah, let's do it.
Shut up. I'm embarrassed.
Oh my God, it was the funniest article I've ever read in my entire life.
I watched a couple of compilation videos on YouTube. I've got it all figured out.
You're listening to the No Big Banana podcast.
Welcome back to the No Big Banana podcast. My name is Charles.
My name's Cody.
And today, like I mentioned, we were just talking about police and about how, part of the issues with, what are your thoughts about that, Cody, in terms of we've all acknowledged, I think, at this point that we've got a problem with the police. And so now we have a question on how to solve that issue. As Cody mentioned to me earlier, Minneapolis apparently has just disbanded their police.
Yeah, apparently a couple hours ago, this is on Sunday, but a couple hours ago, the city council voted to disband their police department.
So that's really interesting.
I think I'm viewing it more or less as an experiment. It may have been done a little bit too quickly and a little too emotionally.
Yeah.
But I think it's a good start. It's not necessarily what I was envisioning with police accountability, but if that's the route that they're going to take, I guess that's their choice.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like it's an interesting rug to yank out from under your society that way. I think that, I'm not to say that it's the bad decision, might be the bad decision right now. I mean, I think that you probably would want to, if we're going to say let's get rid of police, we should probably have some contingencies in place to, make up for the vacuum that's going to create. And if that means that, if that means there is going to be a burst in crime, well, then what are we going to be doing? What money are we, all of that money we saved getting rid of the police, where's that going to be going to ensure that the community stays safe? Is it going to be going out into programs that help the mentally ill?
I mean, they voted to get rid of the police, but they shifted it to community-led councils. So I don't know if it's fully getting rid of the police and if everybody's losing their jobs and blah, blah, blah. Just the whole 9 yards, they're gutting it all. Like I said, I don't think that's the answer, but I'm not sure if that's exactly what they're doing. If that is what they're doing, then I guess we'll see where all the money goes, and I guess we'll see if any of it gets embezzled anywhere.
Yeah.
But that's definitely a very, very slippery slope, because it's hard to say what would happen with crime rates, especially since they don't necessarily have the system in place or people willing to go out and deal with criminals.
Yeah, well, that's a part of it. I mean, apparently there is data. I don't know if you've read into that I think it's called the Zero campaign. Campaign Zero. It's called Campaign Zero, and it's 8 steps to improve policing.
I think I've seen those steps, but I don't think I know what the name of it is.
Okay, so end broken windows policing, community oversight, limit use of force, independently investigate and prosecute, community representation. Yeah, and a big part of this shit is that they don't keep track of the numbers. That's another part of the problem, is they're oh, well, how many people do the police kill a year? And it's well, they don't really keep track of that. And honestly, if you were a police force, would that be one of your priorities to keep track of?
Right. I think it's the EMT approach. It's not how many you lost, how many did you save? They're
Right.
Public servants. They're still people. They still care. And I'm not one of those people that says all cops are bad in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, well, the other thing too is EMTs and firefighters don't kill anybody. So they don't even have to think about it. They're never put into positions like police are, where it's you or them, and you're supposed to be this paladin of the law. So if that person's trying to kill you, then, you got to save yourself. That's human nature.
Yeah.
But I think too that there needs to be a lot more insight and training into shit like de-escalation, like psychology. I always remember seeing things as a kid, seeing a movie like Dog Day Afternoon, or one of those, you see the scene in the movie where you have the hostage negotiator.
Yeah.
And I always remember thinking, why don't all cops just know that stuff? Wouldn't it be beneficial if any cop on the street could do that? Because if you have the ability to talk down somebody like Al Pacino's character in Dog Day Afternoon,
yeah,
then you would have no fucking problem talking down a young black guy who may or may not have a gun, or whatever it is. If in fact you want to keep these officers in place like they have been, then I think that if your argument is that there should be no police, then you should have a contingency in place to handle that when that happens. And
the scary thing is the people that say that there shouldn't be any police are the same people that say give up your guns. That's a very strange road.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think a way that it makes sense in my head is that, like, you know, the conservatives always scream like no government, and I'm of the opinion that, like, I don't think that we need less government. I think that we need more efficient of the government that we currently have.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody would agree with that as a blanket statement. It's just they want it to be their government that just needs to be a little bit better.
Well, that's what I mean is how I kind of see this approach with the police. Like, I'm not somebody who thinks that, you know, we should just get rid of the police entirely, because that's an extreme move. I'm of the opinion that, like, no, it's not that we don't need police. It's just that we need better police. Like, we need, you know,
right.
On the whole, statistically, we need more good cops. It's evident that we do because the bad ones exist. If all cops were good, then we wouldn't have situations like this. So,
right.
You know, our goal should be to get. I don't understand what the anger is about. Like, why wouldn't you want cops to be better?
Yeah, if 1 in 4 cops was good, we wouldn't be in this situation because there are 4 cops that stood there and watched George Floyd get murdered.
That's true. I think that there are less good cops than people who think that cops are wonderful think there are. And I think that there are more good cops than angry people think there are. I think that the truth is somewhere in the middle. I think that the cops are just like any other profession, dude. Like, the difference is that the bad result could be you dying. You know, it's like
the problem is I truly think that there are more bad cops, not cops that do bad things, but I think there are more bad cops than there are good cops. The reason being is that how many times have you seen a video with multiple officers being involved where one officer does something bad and none of the officers do anything about it?
Yeah, I mean,
not doing anything about it makes you just as guilty as doing something. In my opinion.
I agree. What I will say to that is that I have seen some videos lately. I don't know if you saw the one Rogan talked about it, about the cop that pushed that woman when she was down kneeling. And
yeah.
Other woman cop went off on him.
Yeah, that the Reggie Watts episode.
Yeah. That's really good,
that was
man.
A good one. Yeah,
I love seeing that shit.
Policing.
By the way, all of these like Blue Lives Matter people, why is that woman not posted all over your feed? I don't see it. Like, all of these people that want to stand up and say like, oh, you got to support the police and there are good cops. It's like, hey man, here's perfect example. Oh, but it's a black woman cop.
Yeah,
so you might
it's not the example.
Yeah, you might not like that, so you're not going to and that's, you know, it just shows the ignorance of this division, and it shows you don't really care about coming together. You care about making your point. And I think that this is all another example of our clinging as human beings to our individuality as a resistance to our evolution as a species, because we're all going to eventually be just like in a computer. Elon says within 10 years we won't even have to talk to each other.
I mean, shit, I hope it's true.
Me too, dude. Sign me the fuck up. I know that it's like scary, especially at the moment. It's very infantile, but technology moves so quickly. Honestly, if you could exist exactly the way that you're existing now, but just better, why wouldn't you do that?
Right. That's definitely interesting.
If you couldn't discern. Because I think that people treat it as if they would be able to discern. They treat it like, oh, I'm not going to move to the server. It wouldn't be the same, man. And it's like, what if it was the same?
A bunch of motherfuckers haven't seen The Matrix.
Yeah. It's like, what if it was? What if not only it was exactly the same, but it was better because you could manifest things? What if you could just exist exactly as you are now, except that you don't have to sleep, you don't have to eat, you can just like make things appear in front of you? Why would you not want that?
It's such a hard concept for people to grasp, because it's like I can grasp the concept of it, but then I get into the politics of it and the power struggle and the who can make more stuff in front of them than me. What?
Right.
And why does it matter, and why doesn't it matter? And if it's not discernible from real life, why is my Porsche mean anything compared to the guy's Ferrari next next door.
You think that it might remove incentive?
Not necessarily incentive. It removes, it's almost like depression. It's like walking in this limbo state where, sure, you can turn it off at any point, but who's going to want to do that? I would make a great screenplay. Shit.
Yeah.
It would cause an internal battle like none other. You don't want to die. You don't want to turn yourself off, but you really don't want to exist in this world where you can have everything that you want and there are no struggles anymore either. You can only take that for so long, I think. Whether it be 1,000 years or 50 years, I think that everybody has a threshold.
Man, you saying that to me just made me shift my opinion a little bit about it, because I've actually always used what you said as a similar argument against the idea of heaven. Because
Yeah,
I grew up as a Christian, learning about that stuff. I remember as I got older, like doing deep dive thinking about it, I was like, I don't know if eternal anything sounds like something that I want anything to do with. It never ends. I don't think that I could do this shit for like 1,000 years or 10 million years. Like eternity, that sounds awful.
Yeah, it's definitely like, and then not only that, but like I said, you have the ability in your head, you have the ability to make it all stop, but do you really want that?
Well, that's what
I think it would make for a great screenplay.
Well, yeah, that really is what the Matrix is all about. Would you want to stop it? That's because that's like what Cypher said, right? Like, ignorance is bliss.
I think that really is like true. Like in the dated, I think that's the most true thing ever through everything in terms of like a relationship or just looking at life in general. Just being ignorant to what's going on around you is comforting. Almost.
Oh yeah. Well, and that's that's the problem with living. And I've actually been thinking about this lately, because how like there's the argument that complains against people living in the bubble, where it's like, well, if you went to college at like a really liberal university and then you graduated and then you became a teacher at said college, and your entire life in terms of your like social hangouts and like your career was based heavily in the idea of liberalism.
Yeah.
You're not going to grow very much in terms as a whole person with like well-rounded points of view. But then I thought, like, well, in the eyes of who? Like, what really is the problem with living in a vacuum?
I think the problem is, with me, the problem with it is you don't want to see somebody do that to themselves just because you may not know what's out there to experience, but you know that there's more to experience. So you want to, it's almost frustrating to watch somebody get stuck in that and not be able to experience those things.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I guess it is important to be able to be as objective as possible and to hear all sides of the argument. But then also there's the part of me that's just like, it makes sense to me, like maybe a couple 100 years ago, maybe, or even a couple of decades ago, like, yeah, you really got to try your best to like, now there's, with the internet and with how populated the planet has become, it's like, how about I just can afford to just live among the people that I want to live among, and then that be the end of it. Like, why wouldn't you want to surround yourself with like-minded people?
Right. It's definitely a thing, but I think I don't necessarily like people like Crowder and stuff like that. You already know how I feel about all those guys. But just the idea of them existing is good for liberals. The fact that he goes to a lot of liberal colleges and annoys the fuck out of them is good for their brain. Like, whether it be he's going to flip them to the Republicans, which he's never going to do, or not, having him there is simply good for their brains. It's good, like, it's a good thought exercise for them all the time.
Yeah, but I mean, my only thing with guys like him is that they do it in kind of a pompous.
He's very antagonistic.
he's kind of pompous about it. And that's a thing that I don't like. And like I've said this before, but like I feel like liberals try to explain to you why you're wrong, but Republicans can't wait to explain to you why they're right. And right. I mean, and any of my conservative people that whether friends or family, any conservatives I know, within a few minutes, we're talking politics somehow. And then that quickly morphs into this weird Alex Jones conspiracy lane of like, did you know that this, that, and the, and it's like, okay, why are you being so aggressive with like, do you have a pamphlet or something? And then meanwhile, the left is like, you can't say that. Wait, did you, when you said this, did you mean this? it's a headache coming from both
It is.
directions. The two-party system has been crippling America for the last 40 years.
The tribalism is like the worst part about it is you can't go anywhere without hearing something from somebody. And I try to look at everything objectively. So almost in my head, and it's kind of annoying for me because I always take the stance of the opposite of the argument. That even if I agree with what you're saying, usually I will try to argue against you.
Right.
For some reason. It's just the way I operate, and it allows me also to poke holes in my own arguments.
Right.
So I think that having conversations like that and all that is a good.
Yeah, it is good. And, you do have to be able to a certain extent, at least, especially in this country, there's an extent, and obviously there are boundaries and exceptions, but for the most part, you pretty much have to deal with the fact that other people can feel and say how they want to feel and say what they want to say. And that's just a hard truth you have to accept. And it's unfortunately, it's one of the sacrifices you make for having the freedom to do it yourself. And that's the trade-off. Is like you can say whatever crazy shit you want with impunity. You can't be arrested, unless you're like yelling fire in a theater or something, obviously, but you can't be arrested for saying something. And,
Right.
you're the exchange for that is that you have to listen to other people's bullshit.
Yeah, as long as no physical harm is being done, there's really no recourse for anybody to get in trouble for saying anything, no matter what it is.
Yeah, and I believe in that. And I also think that in spite of all of this, I think of Anne Frank, and I think of her as a young child with way more life experience and way more trauma than anybody should ever have to deal with, no matter their age, but especially as a youth. For her to be able to say that she still believes that people are overall good, I have to feel that way. I think that it would be dishonorable.
Yeah,
I think it would dishonor her memory to not feel that way.
Well, the thing is a lot of people, when you're talking about stories like that, they talk about Anne Frank and everything that happened and the Nazis are the bad guys and all that. Everything everybody knows. But they don't always talk about the family that took her in. The reason why she thinks that kind of stuff is because in the darkest hours of humanity, there was still somebody that put themselves in the worst possible position to save her. So
Yeah.
her thought of how bad humanity can be was just as equal to her thought of how good humanity can be, and she chose to focus on the good side of it.
Yeah, that's an important distinction to point out, is that she really did have a choice as to how. I mean, it was her diary; she could write whatever she wanted in there.
Exactly,
So,
and that's how it was a real thing. That she was, to boil it down simply, the glass half full person in the world.
Yeah, and to be able to have that opinion at such a young age in such terrible conditions. But yeah, I think that that's important. And I do think that's true, dude. I think that overall good is winning. I think that this protesting, obviously the violence and the looting excluded. I think that this protesting has been very good. I think that it's fucking lit a fire under the prosecution to not only arrest them, but charge them and then upgrade their charges to make more, to be more justifiable. I don't think that they would get murder one. I think that would be a waste of time. In my opinion, I think that they should give Chauvin 2 and hope to get him on 2. But I don't think that
2 is realistic.
I don't think that murder one is it's too risky. I've seen too many murder ones walk free. State prosecutions don't have a very great record of, getting the big ones, i.e. OJ or Casey Anthony. Murder one is really, really hard to prove. So I think that it's justifiable that he got murdered too. And it's good to hear that Breonna Taylor's case is being reopened, because that shit is a catastrophe. What a horrible tragedy, what a fucking disaster, and a complete breakdown of the system as a whole. If I'm being honest, I think that the Breonna Taylor situation is a much more much more startling example of breakdown in the system. Like Derek Chauvin was just a crazy asshole, and his 3 cops next to him just sat there and did nothing. But this shit with Breonna Taylor was like the person they were looking for was already in custody, and they just fucking stormed the house shooting, and just, it's absurd.
Yeah, that one and the Arbery one as well. Both of those are more, they're much more evident to the like systemic breakdown,
Yeah, I think
as opposed to the individual making a decision or being not as well trained and something happening, or it just happening in a police incident where there actually was a report and a call being made, as opposed to 2 country dudes who had it in with the police sheriff and got a protection job from the police sheriff, even though they're not cops, and then ran down some black dude in the middle of the street and gunned him down with a shotgun.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. Well, that makes for the end of Thursday. So, that's all we've got for you this week. Forgive the audio if it's a little wonky. I think it's going to be okay, but we'll
Should
see.
Be okay, hopefully.
We'll see how it comes out. We've done this over Discord. So, next week, I'm going to be here with Justin and Justin, which is a nightmare already.
Both
Justin,
with an E.
Yeah, my Justin, my friend Justin, my director Justin, is going to be with us to do some guest episodes. So follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at NoBigBanana, or send us an email at nobigbanana@gmail.com.
And remember to just be nice to people.